So as Christian kind of talked about it, adding cover crops as well as organic matter, so if you do compost, is a great for many reasons. So we'll talk about a little bit later today about the soil fertility aspect of how it can contribute nutrients to your soil, specifically nitrogen we'll be calculating, but also that organic matter and those nutrients that it provides helps drive life and cycling in the soil through the different microorganisms it stimulates. And if the microorganisms are active, that's going to help release some of the nutrients. So a lot of these organic fertilizers that I'll show pretty soon, if you add them to the soil, they don't break down or release nutrients as quickly unless you have the microorganisms acting upon it, as well as the right kind of conditions like moisture for it. So here is a test that we have, and you can try to purchase it if you want. The different portions of it can be a little bit costly for the test strips, as well as like these different jars. But if you do it once a year, it might, if you're working with a new fallow type of field, it might be good to see if your practice, how it improves your soil. So for this one, it's just a quick demonstration of what organic matter can do. So when you do this test, you fill it up. There's instructions, but you fill up, the container with soil, and then you add just a little bit of water to stimulate any kind of microbial activity, and then you cover it with this rubber sealed lid to keep any kind of carbon dioxide in it. Because when microorganisms are active, kind of like humans, when we work, we respire and release carbon dioxide. So this is measuring that. So you put this test strip inside, and if it changes color, this is where you can see if your soil has become active. Yes.
Low carbon dioxide and yellow green is very high respiration. So because the microorganism is in the soil, they will respire, and then they will emit the carbon dioxide, and then it make the color change like a litmus paper.
So we can test it right now. You can either, like Kun Hui had in her hand, assess it visually through that different chart, but they also sell this machine. It's kind of pricey, so unless you really want it and gonna do a lot of tests, you may not need it. This test paper is good enough, but then for this one, we're just gonna show you what comes about. So for the first one, I just incubated inert sand. So it's I tried to get a soil that was very low in microbiological activity, but I couldn't get one before this this workshop, because a lot of the farmers they're doing these good practices, so that their soils are already active. But what you do is, as you can see on the test strip, as Kun Hui said, it's very low right now, so we can expect it to be 0 or 1. But with this machine, it can give us an actual number. So we'll insert it and select the appropriate test and click read. Yeah, click read one more time.
Did you already add the water to the sample?
Yes, and then
how did you incubate it? When you say incubate,
so when you incubate it, you add your soil sample first, and then you add, they say about 10 milliliters or 9 milliliters of water, but your soil has to be dry. So if you can let your soil dry out, make sure there's no rocks in it, and add it to this sample, and then you'll add water. But if you're short on time, as long as your soil, if your soil is wet, you can add a little bit of water, but just enough so it doesn't pond. Because if it's ponding, that means there's no airspace for the microorganisms, and they can actually suffocate, and they won't be active. So you want to add just enough so it's not at that saturated stage, right below that.
and that could happen in the field too. If we're adding too much water, could we be drowning our microbes?
Drowning your microbes, as well as affecting nitrogen cycling. So if you add different kind of nitrogen, it's either or fertilizer, it can either leach if you're adding too much water, or same thing with the microbes. If there's no oxygen in the system, the microorganisms that are there and can thrive in oxygen deficient environments, they steal it from nitrate and nitrogen, and that can actually turn it into a gas. So that's another way you can lose nutrients is if there's too much water, either through leaching or through gaseous loss.
So the reading here is 1.21, which is about here to number 2. And it actually convert to you how much part per million of carbon dioxide. And it says 5.8. Usually they convert pound to acre, but yeah, it tell you how much carbon dioxide per acre. Unit is part per million.
So the target where you want to be, if you read this, there's this manual that comes with it. It's about, if you can get to that 3 or 5 level for the test strip, that's preferred.
Yeah, too high is also no good. That means everything, all the organic matter you add in, it will just decompose and turn into carbon dioxide. It's actually generating greenhouse gas if it's too high.
What would you do in that scenario? Add more organic matter, or if you have too many microbial activity, what is that?
Yeah, you
practice
can
to
feed it with more carbon to keep it decomposing, but the high nitrogen compound actually decompose faster, so the high carbon can slow it down.
So add carbon to your soil.
Yeah, I think that makes
So
sense.
if we were to get a reading and it came up really high, then we might adjust our practice to add more carbon.
Yeah.
More carbon-rich
Yeah.
amendment.
Yes. It actually slow it down even though you add more carbon. Like you add the wood chip, it will decompose slower than adding nitrogen.
But they also do have a test kit. So this is a low carbon dioxide test, and they also have a very high one that can reach at a higher rate. So if you do expect your soil to be very active, as some soils on like the Big Island can be, then you may need to purchase that particular test strip so you can catch that range. So we're gonna test this one where we added 1 part sand to 1 part compost, and as you can see, just doing it over a 24-hour period, it significantly changed the test strip. So we're gonna just measure that right now. Press the low
So if you're
again.
in the field and your field was that sand kind of thing, and you did a different practice by adding compost, you could represent the second sample with that practice added and then see the change.
Yeah, so you could take a sample before you add your amendment. So before you plant or before you add your fertilizer, if it's a new field or before you do your practice, take a sample. Let it dry out, but keep it. And then after you do your practices, whether that's a couple months or even a year after, you can come back and take a sample and then see if, over that time, it did help increase that soil respiration and activity level for you.
Okay, so the reading is 3.22, so right around here, and part per million is 34. So we change from 5 to 34. Really
So in getting our readings on this, if this is one of the soil health tests, and we got a parts per million, would we be able to get into that later today when we look at how to take that information into all the other information that we'd be sampling for? So if CO2 is one soil health kind of test, I guess would we talk about that later with what other tests and results we would be getting and how we might adjust?
I'm not sure you can convert this into. I usually use it for comparison.
Okay.
So if I know there's a soil that I didn't do any amendments, so I will compare to that how well I improve it after I add amendment, this cover crop or yeah. I use it for comparison because I really don't know how much carbon dioxide part per million wise we want to store in the soil.
So it doesn't matter the exact parts per million number, it's more that we're looking for change from the baseline to then after our practice. So parts per million doesn't matter as much as RBC and improvements, the numbers just changing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you talk about how to do small plot experiment, something like that. So you always have a control that you want to compare with your treatment with. And so yeah, that's one thing I can think of. Having a good control, or someone have a super healthy soil, you want to check theirs and see if you are as good as theirs.
Or you could maybe around a fence row, they talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
So if there's
natural ecosystem always have healthier soil because we didn't disturb it too much, and that is also a good reference. Yeah. In don't know which is the other one.
So we could either compare it before the
Soil.
treatment, or another approach would be if we want to take a fence row reading to where we want to get to and measure that as what we want to reach as a healthy target, and then we measure our treatment. And so both of them are comparing
Yeah.
from either baseline before the treatment or from our practice to where we want to get to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you can always aim for 3 to 4 and not